Hello and welcome to Profit Insights. My guest today is Akshaya Moondra, who is the CEO of Vodafone Idea. Vodafone is coming out with one of the largest follow-up public offer of 18,000 crores. Uh, we have Akshay today joining us. Akshay, 18,000 crores, one of the largest FPOs that you're coming to the market. Give me a sense of what you're going to do with this 18,000 crores.
Sajeet, thank you for inviting me to this chat. Your question, I think before I get there, let me just also say that, as you said, 18,000 crores, largest FPO. We have completed our anchor allocation, and that has been announced to the stock exchange. And would just like to mention that in that we have names of many leading investors like GQG, Fidelity Management Research. We have UBS, we have RWC amongst the foreign investors. From the Indian mutual funds, we have HDFC Mutual Fund, Motilal Oswal, Bond Mutual Fund, and we also have insurance companies like SBI General and ICICI Pru Life. So a fairly well-covered, diversified book with leading investors. And one of the strong points is that the hedge fund allocation is less than 5%, which represents also the strength of the book. To your question, what is the use of these 18,000 crores? This has been explained in RHP, and I'll briefly cover that. The total amount of 12,750 crores will be used for capex. About 2,175 crores is for the spectrum payments, and the balance is for general corporate purposes. And out of 12,750 of capex, about 5,700 goes towards 5G, and about 7,000 goes towards 4G, which is both a mix of 4G coverage expansion and 4G capacity growth. Just to make it clear that this is not the entire funding or the entire capex that we are talking about. This is part of our overall funding plan, which also includes 2,075 crores, which is coming from the promoters, and additionally debt funding, for which we have been in discussions with the banks. And the idea is to have a fully funded plan for our capex needs for the foreseeable future.
I know you are raising nearly 20,000 crores in equity and 25,000 crores is expected to be raised in debt. In total, over the next 3 years, as the debt plans also fructify, as you yourself said that you are in discussion with the banks and financial institutions, what would be the total capex that you look to put in the next 3 to 4 years?
So while I'm not in a position to give you that guidance, what I can say is that the total equity plus debt is only being or is going to be used for growth capex. Our other requirements like payment of the existing debt, payment to vendors, and also payment of government dues post the moratorium will be met out of our internal cash generation. So the new funding, whether equity or debt, is primarily meant for growth capex.
Okay, I get that part of it, because you're in a FPO process, so you won't be able to give more than what is there in the RHP, and your full year numbers are also expected in the next couple or in a month or so. So I understand that part of it, but you mentioned that you got a good anchor book. GQG is there, UBS, Fidelity, their domestic institution. Many of them are long-term investors, and that means that they have to be assured what is the growth plan going forward. So what is the kind of assurance that you have given them? Because if they have to stay in for long, and there's long-term equity partners or strategic means financial investor partners for you, what is the kind of assurances that you have given them?
I think we have explained to them our story, and like I am trying to explain to you. So let's say if I were to put it in a few points, one is that everybody is aware of the India story and what does it mean for various industries. So I think that I'll not talk about, but let's come to the Indian telecom. What are the positive things? First is that India has a growing population, a large population which is still growing, which is not the case with many other countries. And also the fact that every citizen of the country is either a customer or a prospective customer. So that is a strong point. Secondly, the penetration levels in India for 4G are still at 66%. And if you compare that with China at 116%, there's a long runway left for growth of penetration. The third is that the ARPUs in India today are amongst the lowest in any large economy or comparable economy. If you look at China today, we are less than one-third ARPU of China. So definitely there is room for ARPU improvement. ARPU improvement can happen in three ways. First is tariff correction, which is very obvious. Second is upgrade of subscribers from 2G to 4G or from lower usage plans to higher usage plans. And that opportunity is the largest for us because we have 42% of our subscribers who are 2G subscribers today. The third lever of ARPU improvement would also be that you are aware that today telecom industry is becoming the best means to digitally distribute any content. And delivery of content on telco platforms by major content providers, including all the OTT players, is a trend which is growing day by day. And that is another thing which augurs well for the growth of the ARPU of the customers. So this is from an industry perspective. The last point on the industry is that we are now having an industry structure with 3 private players and a government operator, which is right structure for the industry to get returns while participating in the growth, which was not the case when we had 10 operators. So I think the industry structure is also good. As far as Vodafone Idea is concerned, I would say we have delivered a fairly good performance post the reforms package announcement in September 21. This has been done even when we have had very limited investments because of the liquidity constraints, and also where we have continued to lose subscribers. But despite these two constraints, we have increased our 4G subscribers for 10 successive quarters, every quarter on quarter. For ARPU also increased 10 successive quarters sequentially every quarter. And you will say that the revenue and EBITDA trends are also moving in the right direction, of course, gradually. What prevents us from participating in the industry growth and still lose subscribers is the lack of 4G coverage vis-a-vis competition. And once we start using the funding for capex, a large part of that and the highest priority of that is expanding our 4G coverage, which should enable us, or which we believe will enable us to arrest the loss of subscribers. Today, our subscriber acquisition of new subscriber share is already higher than our customer market share. And so the only reason why we lose subscribers is because of lack of 4G coverage. And as that gets issued through our funding and investment, then we are very hopeful that we will be able to participate. And I believe this is what kind of brings the investors to us. One of the other last important points is that the government is now a major stakeholder in the company, both as a shareholder and the largest credit provider. And given our situation and the balance sheet challenges we've had, which will get addressed over a period of time, it is government support will also play an important role. I was very happy to see the statements both by the Honorable Minister and the Finance Secretary yesterday, who have come out in support of saying that they need a healthy competitive industry and have expressed support for the FPO of the company.
Akshay, 17 circles, that's your focus. I was just looking at your circles. 15 of them, you are the third largest player in them. Is the focus going to be to push yourself from third to second in those circles?
I would say changing the rankings is not our primary focus.
I'm talking about revenue market share will also increase, right, in that sense?
So let's say that may be an outcome. What I'm saying is the way we look at our strategy is that we have to make investments so that we can grow our revenues. So our investments are focused on execution of our strategy. Whether that will result in change in market share, I'm not commenting on that. Of course, if you will see in the past, whenever any player kind of expands their coverage in a significant manner, it does result in improvements because then you start participating in a larger geography, larger market. However, our focus will remain on executing our strategy, investing as we plan to, and getting the benefits from them. And the market share changes would be consequential. And we have always focused on good use of capital, and that would also be one of the driving forces for the decision making on where to make investments and how to make investments.
So once this fundraising is done, when do we see qualitative and quantitative improvement in your revenue mix, in your ARPUs, in your subscriber additions?
So, as I said, our revenues have been improving, 4G subscribers have been improving. The investment should make that improvement more meaningful rather than the gradual trajectory which we have seen without investments. In terms of where the investment will help us significantly is to help us arrest the loss of subscribers because of lack of 4G coverage. And of course, also to roll out 5G, which is important. I will not be able to give you a timeline, but I would say that investing in 4G coverage is our topmost priority. And we expect that once that investment is completed in an expeditious manner, that would be the biggest factor which will enable us, or which should enable us, to arrest the loss of subscribers.
Because, do you think that you have bottomed out as far as the loss of subscriber is concerned on a gross level? Because 4G you've been increasing, but on a gross level you've been losing subscribers. So have you bottomed out as far as that is concerned? From now on, you're going to see a gross subscriber addition going forward?
So I would say that we have to make the investments first and improve the coverage and experience. But we are very hopeful that once that investment is made, we should be able to arrest the loss of subscribers. I mean, I would say that if today we get a higher customer acquisition compared to our market share, why would we not be able to retain subscribers once we are able to provide a better coverage? And that would be our focus here.
I've been speaking with some of the investors, and they've been saying that they expect you to add at least, what about 15 million net subscribers on an annual basis from here on. That's the expectation they are putting it on you. Is that a achievable target for you going forward? Every year, 15 million net additions from now on?
As I said, we will be able to participate in the growth of the industry and get our reasonable share. As I said, as we start participating, and we are doing more than our CMS in terms of new customer acquisitions already. So we hope that we should be able to match up to customers, the investors' expectations.
Good. On the tariff front, that's everyone knows that tariffs are low, but no one is willing to push the button first because who's going to take the plunge? But you will have to do that, right? That's the kind of assurance that you've given to the investors, saying that your ARPUs are going to go up, your revenues are going to go up. So give me a broad sense of how much the tariff can go up. Of course, you will take it on a phased manner, but what is the kind of potential tariff that can go up from here on?
So let me describe it that firstly, what should be the extent of tariff increase? And I would say that tariffs at least need to get to a level where the industry can start returning its cost of capital, which is not the case today for any operator. And we've had a prolonged period of operating below cost of capital, which is not good for any industry, because otherwise, where will the industry generate the cash to be able to make future investments? And we all know that telecom is an industry where investment will continuously be required. So definitely, the cash generation needs to get to a level where cost of capital is covered. Now, the second point is that what should be the quantum of increase, or where is the ARPU? So while I cannot give you a figure, there is a fair amount of commentary from our peers. And I would say that including the 5G investment, roughly the figures which the industry players are talking about in terms of recovery cost of capital should be right. So definitely fair amount of correction is required from where we are today to reach to a level where cost of capital can be covered. I would say the urgency is there because the cost of capital was not covered even when we were only in a 4G scenario for quite some time. And 5G has been added to that, which has further kind of accentuated the situation. So I think there's a strong need for tariffs to get to levels where ARPUs are sustainable and provide ability to the industry to make further investments. And I would expect it to be faster than a very slow pace. In terms of a quantum of increase at one time, we have seen tariff increases the last two times. And that quantum of tariff increase at a single time has been well absorbed in the market. So sometimes one may have a concern, is something too much at a time? And we've had two precedents, I think, over the last 4 years or so, where price increases have been well absorbed in the market, realizing the fact that the absolute ARPU levels in the country are amongst the lowest.
Can I put in a figure here? Because what I've been given to understand that you may need between 20 to 25% of increase in tariffs post-elections up to FY26. Is that a right figure to go by to get the return on capital?
No, I think return on capital, you have to see that what is the current level of ARPUs, what is the ARPU required to get to a cost of capital. I believe that gap is much more than 20% today. So a 20% tariff correction will not take you there. How much would be the tariff correction? I cannot comment. But as I mentioned that in the past, tariff corrections of about 20% have been well absorbed in the market.
My final two questions that I want to ask you is, if by September 25, the moratorium ends for many of the telecom operators. And so every operator would be looking to increase the tariff so that they can generate internal cash flows to pay up the government spectrum fees which they owe. How do you see yourself? Will you be able to generate enough cash flows to take care of paying off government debt?
So you see, the moratorium expires in September 25. As I mentioned in the beginning, that we are tying up the funding primarily for new capex, and the existing obligations will be met out of our internal accruals, which we expect will improve as the investments come along. In terms of immediately after the moratorium, whether we are able to pay the entire obligation from our improved cash generation or not, we'll have to see at that time. But what is important to note is that the government reforms package announced in September 21 has provided that post the moratorium, this installment series, which is coming out of the 4-year installments which have been deferred, can be converted to equity by the government. And my understanding is that this was provided for in the reforms package because there was a realization that while the cash generation from the business will improve, whether it will be sufficient to take care of the government obligation immediately after the moratorium is over was not certain. And so government has provided this in the reforms package, a possibility of conversion of this deferred installment series, which would start from October 25 on. So that is one support which is available in case it cannot be made out of the full cash generation.
But that would be a backstop for every telecom operator, right?
I mean, yeah, that's available for any operator if they wanted to do, provided you have opted for deferment. So everybody has not opted for deferment. It is available for anyone who has opted for deferment.
Okay. I've been talking to many of the analysts, many of the investors that you've been talking to as well, and who've invested to you in your FPO. Now they see that if Vodafone is able to execute the plan that it has envisaged, moving to 4G, from 4G to 5G migration, and your subscriber additions that you're looking at on an every annual basis. They're looking at, they're hoping that the revenues would be from 40,000 crores now to 75,000 odd crores by FY26. Is that an achievable target for you?
Sanjeev, I cannot comment on specific targets. You know that very well. And I think in the interest of time, we'll have to bring this to a conclusion now because
Yeah. That was my last question. I wanted to check with you whether that's an aggressive target the street has put in for you.
we'll look at that. Thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Akshay.